The desert held its breath. Sunset bled across the canyon walls like a wound torn open across the sky, crimson and gold, spilling over jagged ridges, pooling in the arroyos below. The air tasted of dust and sage, sharp and clean, carrying the distant cry of a hawk circling high above the mesas. It was the hour when shadows grew long and the land became a place of secrets, where every stone might hide a rattlesnake and every silence might conceal an enemy. Jace Holloway didn't hear the hawk anymore. He didn't feel the desert heat baking through his torn shirt or the blood soaking into the sand beneath him. He only knew pain, a white-hot fire spreading from the bullet wound in his side, pulsing with every shallow breath. His horse was gone. His rifle was gone. His water was gone. Everything that kept a man alive in this merciless country had been stripped away by the raiders who left him for dead 3 hours past noon. He'd crawled maybe half a mile since then, dragging himself through creosote brush and over rocks that tore at his hands. His vision swam with black spots that grew larger with each passing minute. The sun was setting now, painting the world in shades of dying light, and Jace knew with absolute certainty that he wouldn't see it rise again. His fingers clawed at the sand, trying to pull himself forward one more time, but his arms had turned to water. He collapsed onto his side, gasping, tasting copper and dirt. The canyon walls spun above him, red stone swirling with darkening sky. This is how it ends, he thought. Alone. Forgotten. Just bones for the coyotes. Then he saw her. At first, he thought she was a mirage, a trick of his dying brain conjuring comfort where none existed. A silhouette against the burning sky, tall and still as the canyon walls themselves. But mirages don't kneel. They don't lean close with eyes dark as obsidian, studying you with an intensity that cuts through even the fog of blood loss. Don't speak. Her voice was barely a whisper, urgent and low. If my people hear you, we both die. Jace tried to focus on her face, but the edges kept blurring. Apache. He could tell from the doeskin dress, the beadwork at her shoulders, the way she moved silent and certain. His heart hammered against his ribs. He'd heard the stories every settler told around campfires. Apache warriors could track a man across bare rock. They could appear out of nowhere and vanish like smoke. They showed no mercy to trespassers on their land. He should be terrified. Instead, he felt a strange, distant gratitude. At least he wouldn't die alone. Please, he managed, the word coming out as little more than a rasp. Water. The woman Taya, though he wouldn't learn her name until later, glanced over her shoulder toward the canyon rim. The last rays of sunlight caught her profile, illuminating high cheekbones and a mouth set in a hard line of decision. She shouldn't be doing this. Everything in her training, her upbringing, her loyalty to her people screamed at her to leave him, to let the desert take what it claimed. But she didn't. Quiet, she commanded, pulling a water skin from her hip. She lifted his head with surprising gentleness and pressed the opening to his cracked lips. Slow, not too much. The water was warm and tasted like life itself. Jace wanted to gulp it down, drain every drop, but she pulled it away after only a few swallows. Can you walk? Her eyes scanned the desert behind him, watching for movement, for dust plumes, for any sign of pursuit. No, the truth came out flat and final. Taya's jaw tightened. She should leave. She had to leave. The War Council had convened 3 days ago after the raiders struck the eastern camps. The elders spoke of vengeance. The warriors sharpened their blades. Her own father, the chief, had ordered every scout to watch for strangers, for enemies, for any sign of the white men who brought violence to their lands. And here she was, offering water to one of them. There's a cave, she said, making a decision that would change both their fates. 100 yards north, hidden. No one knows it but me. She slipped her arm under his shoulders, and Jace nearly screamed at the pain that lanced through his side. You will be silent, or you will die. Do you understand? Yes, he hissed through clenched teeth. What followed was a nightmare journey across stone and sand. Every step sent agony through Jace's body. Twice he nearly blacked out. Taya half carried, half dragged him, her strength remarkable for her size. She moved with the practiced efficiency of someone who dehauled deer carcasses in water jugs across miles of harsh terrain. The cave mouth appeared like a blessing, a narrow split in the canyon wall, hidden behind a tumble of boulders and scrub cedar. Taya eased Jace through the opening into cool darkness that smelled of damp stone and ancient sleep. She lowered him onto sandy ground, and he lay there gasping, listening to his pulse thunder in his ears. "Stay here," Taya commanded. "Make no sound. No fire, no movement after dark. If I can return before dawn, I will." "Why?" Jace's voice was barely audible. "Why are you doing this?" Taya paused at the cave entrance, silhouetted against the dying light. For a long moment, she didn't answer. Outside, a coyote began its evening song, a long wavering cry that echoed across the mesas. When she finally spoke, her voice carried a weight that went beyond the immediate danger. "Because once, someone showed mercy when they should have shown none. And I learned that sometimes the bravest thing is not to kill your enemy, but to see them as human first." Then she was gone, slipping into the twilight as silently as she'd appeared, leaving Jace alone in the darkness with questions he was too weak to voice and gratitude too deep for words. The night settled over the canyon like a blanket. Stars emerged, brilliant and cold. And in the hidden cave, a wounded cowboy drifted into fevered sleep, not knowing that the woman who saved him had just set in motion a chain of events that would test the very meaning of loyalty, honor, and sacrifice. Far in the distance, war drums began to beat. Dawn came slowly to the canyon, seeping into the hidden cave like water through sand. Jace woke to pain sharp and insistent, radiating from his side in waves that made his breath catch. For a moment, he couldn't remember where he was. Then memory crashed back. The ambush, the crawling, the woman who appeared like an answered prayer. He tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. The world tilted, and he fell back against the cave wall, gasping. His shirt was stiff with dried blood, and when he carefully probed the wound beneath, his fingers came away sticky. The bullet had torn through the meat of his side, missing anything vital but leaving a channel of ruined flesh that screamed with infection's first whisper. He'd die here, he realized. Not today, maybe not tomorrow, but soon. Without proper doctoring, without clean bandages, without the medicine that might hold back the fever already beginning to kindle in his blood. "You're awake." Jace's head snapped toward the cave entrance, too fast, sending fresh pain lancing through his side. Taya stood there, morning light behind her, holding a bundle wrapped in cloth. She moved inside with the same silent grace he remembered from the night before, and in the better light, he could see her more clearly. She was younger than he'd first thought, maybe 25, with long black hair braided back from her face. Her eyes were the color of desert earth after rain, dark and deep. She wore practical clothes, a simple doeskin dress, moccasins worn soft with use, a knife at her belt. Everything about her spoke of capability, of a life lived close to the bone of survival. "I brought food," she said, kneeling beside him. "And medicine." She unwrapped the bundle, revealing strips of dried meat, a small pouch of something that smelled like crushed herbs, and several strips of clean cloth. Jace watched her work, noticed how her hands moved with practiced certainty. "You've done this before," he observed, his voice still rough with pain and thirst. "My mother was a healer." Taya didn't look at him as she spoke, focused instead on preparing a poultice. "She taught me plants, which to harvest, how to mix them. Before the fever took her 3 winters ago. I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't bring back the dead." The words came out flat, matter of fact. She mixed water from her skin with the crushed herbs, creating a paste that smelled bitter and green. "This will hurt." She wasn't lying. When Taya peeled back his bloody shirt and applied the poultice directly to the wound, Jace bit down on his lip hard enough to taste blood. The medicine burned like liquid fire, but beneath the pain, he felt something else, a cooling sensation that seeped into the inflamed flesh. What is it? He managed through gritted teeth. Yarrow, sage. Other things. Taya worked efficiently, binding his wound with the clean cloth strips. It will fight the poison in your blood. But you lost much already. You need rest, water, time. Time we don't have. Jace tried to focus through the pain. Your people. They're searching. Yes. Taya sat back on her heels, studying him with those penetrating eyes. The warriors found tracks yesterday evening. Blood trail leading toward the eastern canyons. They think you went that way, I made sure of it. Jace stared at her. You ... covered for me. I swept the real tracks. Left false ones pointing away from here. She said it as simply as describing the weather. But my cousin, Nako, he's the best tracker in 3 territories. If he decides to search more carefully, he'll find the truth. And then ... double quote. She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. Why risk it? Jace asked again, the same question from the night before. You don't know me. Don't know if I'm worth saving. Taya was quiet for a long moment, her gaze distant. When she spoke, her voice carried a pain that went deeper than any bullet wound. 6 moons ago, raiders came to our camps. White men with covered faces and hearts like stone. They burned lodges, killed elders who couldn't run fast enough. And they took my brother, her hands clenched into fists. Kaya, he was only 15 winters. They took him and 5 others. We tracked them for 2 days, but the trail went cold near the trading post at Red Rock Station. I didn't know, Jace said quietly. I'm sorry. Your sorrow means nothing. Taya's eyes snapped back to his face, hard as flint. But your life might mean something. Because those raiders, they wore the mark of the man who runs the station. A brand on their horses. A scorpion with twin tails. Recognition flashed across Jace's face before he could hide it. You know them, Taya said. Not a question. The Scorpion brothers. Jace's voice went cold. Kane and Ethan Driscoll. They control everything from Red Rock to the border. Trading post is just a front. They run guns, whiskey, stolen horses ... Double quote, he paused, meeting her eyes. And people. God help me, I didn't know about your brother, but I've heard stories. They take prisoners sometimes. Use them for leverage or sell them to mining operations down in Mexico. Taya's jaw tightened until the muscles stood out like cords. They still have him? If they took him alive, maybe. The Driscolls don't kill captives unless they have the living prisoners have value. Jace shifted, trying to ease his position, and immediately regretted it. Fresh pain bloomed. But 6 months is a long time. I can't promise. I don't want promises. Taya cut him off. I want truth. And I want to know if you're one of them. I'm not. The words came out fierce and immediate. I ride for the Broken Arrow Ranch, 30 miles east. We're honest cattlemen. The Driscolls tried to shake us down for protection money last year. When we refused, they ambushed our trail crew, killed 2 good men. I've been looking for evidence to bring to the territorial marshal ever since. And did you find it? Taya asked. I found their hideout in the Badlands. Saw maybe 15 men, crates of rifles, and ... double quotes, he swallowed hard. And prisoners, 3 men in chains. I didn't see any Apache, but I didn't get close enough for a full count before they spotted me. Taya leaned forward, intensity burning in her eyes. Where? Exactly where? Taya. Jace's voice softened. Even if I told you, you can't go there. Not alone. Those men are killers. I am Apache. Her voice cut like a blade. I have tracked mountain lions through snowstorms. I have survived hunger that would break your spirit. Don't tell me what I can't do. They stared at each other, the space between them charged with tension and something else. A recognition, perhaps, of shared grief and shared stubbornness. The hideout is in Skeleton Canyon, Jace finally said. 3 hours ride northwest in the volcanic hills. There's an old Spanish mine they use as a depot. But Taya, listen. A sound outside froze them both. Voices, distant but clear, carrying across the still morning air. Men speaking in Apache, their words rhythmic and alert. Taya moved to the cave entrance in absolute silence, pressing herself against the rock wall where she could see without being seen. Jace tried to quiet his breathing, every muscle tensed despite the pain. Tracks here, near the ridge, a man's voice drifted in. Old, maybe 2 days. Not old enough to ignore. A second voice, deeper, with authority. Nako says he found blood near the southern canyon. Fresh blood. Taya's hand went to her knife, but she didn't draw it. She simply stood there, still as stone, watching. The council wants answers, the first voice continued. The chief says if there's a white man on our land, we bring him to justice. Apache justice. Footsteps crunched on gravel, moving closer. Jace could see Taya's profile, now the set of her jaw, the way her eyes tracked the speakers with predatory focus. She looked like a wolf deciding whether to fight or flee. The footsteps paused. So close now that Jace could hear the leather creak of moccasins, the soft sound of breathing. Nothing here, the second voice finally said. Just rocks and ghosts. Nako won't be satisfied with ghosts. Then let Nako search. We have other ground to cover. The footsteps moved away, fading into the distance. Taya remained frozen for another full minute before slowly relaxing. When she turned back to Jace, her face was unreadable. My cousin, she said quietly. He's coming. When he searches, he'll find this place. He always does. How long? Jace asked. Maybe today, maybe tomorrow. But soon. Taya moved back to where he sat, her decision made. When you can walk, we go, together, to Skeleton Canyon. What? Jace shook his head. No, that's suicide. Alone, yes. Together, we have a chance. She crouched in front of him, and for the first time, he saw not hardness in her eyes but desperate hope. You know where they are. I know how to move unseen. You need me to survive these lands. I need you to find my brother. Taya, they'll kill us both. They might. She placed her hand over his brief contact, but it carried the weight of an oath. But doing nothing will kill me slower. Every day Kaya is in their hands is a day I fail him. I won't fail anymore. Jace looked at this woman who'd saved his life, who carried her own grief like stones in her pockets, who was willing to risk everything for family. He thought about the 2 dead men from his ranch. He thought about justice that seemed always to slip through his fingers like desert sand. All right, he said. When I can walk, we go. Good. Taya stood, gathering her things. Rest now, drink water. I'll return tonight with more medicine. She paused at the cave entrance, looking back. And Jace, if you betray me, if this is some trick to lead me into a trap, I will kill you myself. Slowly. Fair enough, Jace replied and meant it. She vanished into the bright morning, leaving him alone with his pain and his thoughts. Outside, the desert heat was already building, promising another scorching day. But inside the hidden cave, a fragile alliance had been forged, built not on trust, but on necessity, on shared loss and shared enemies. It would have to be enough. 3 days passed in the hidden cave, each one measured by pain and the slow return of strength. Taya came every evening after dark, bringing food, fresh medicine, and news from the camp. The warriors had expanded their search. Her father had dispatched scouts to Red Rock Station to gather information. Tensions were rising. Some of the young men wanted immediate action, wanted to ride out and exact vengeance on any white settlement they could find. They're angry, Taya explained on the 3rd night, rewrapping Jace's wound with practiced hands. 3 families lost sons to the raiders. The women cry for justice. The warriors sharpen their weapons. My people are good people, but grief makes everyone dangerous. Like it's making you dangerous, Jace observed quietly. Taya's hands paused for just a heartbeat before continuing their work. Yes, Jace had learned more about her in those 3 days of whispered conversations. She was the chief's eldest daughter, expected to marry a warrior named Takoda, who'd already approached her father twice with gifts. She'd been trained as a healer and a scout, unusual for a woman, but her mother had insisted, and the chief had permitted it after Taya proved her skills. She loved the desert with a fierce pride, knew every water source within 3 days' ride, could read weather in the clouds and danger in the flight of birds. And she carried guilt like a physical weight, because she'd been the one to send Cassia to gather firewood the morning the raiders came. She'd promised to go with him but had been delayed helping with a difficult childbirth. By the time she reached the wood-gathering site, her brother was gone, and only churned earth and blood remained. "It wasn't your fault," Jace told her that third night, after she'd finished with his bandages. "Wasn't it?" Taya's voice was bitter. "I was supposed to protect him. That's what older sisters do. Instead I was." She stopped, her jaw clenching. "It doesn't matter. What matters is bringing him home." Jace understood that kind of guilt. He carried his own the 2 ranch hands who died while he'd been checking the far pastures, too far away to help when the Driscoll's men struck. He'd found the bodies hours later, and the image of their faces had haunted his sleep ever since. "We're both carrying ghosts," he said softly. "Then we'll carry them together," Taya replied, "until we lay them to rest." That same night, she helped him stand for the first time. His legs shook like a newborn foal's, and sweat poured down his face from the effort, but he managed 10 steps before she eased him back down. "Tomorrow night," she said, "we try for 20. And the night after, we walk to the canyon mouth. And then we see if you're strong enough for what comes next." But fate, as it often did, had other plans. The next evening, Taya didn't come at sunset. Jace waited in the darkness, listening to the night sounds, the distant yip of coyotes, the soft hoot of an owl, the whisper of wind through the canyon. As the hours stretched, worry gnawed at him. Something was wrong. She finally appeared near midnight, moving with unusual urgency. Even in the dim starlight filtering into the cave, Jace could see the tension in her shoulders. "What happened?" he asked. "They found your horse." Taya's voice was tight, or what was left of it. 2 miles west, near the dry wash. "Shot and butchered." But that's not the worst. She knelt beside him, and in the faint light, Jace could see anger burning in her eyes, hot and fierce. The raiders struck again. This afternoon. Hit a homestead on the eastern boundary, a white family. Killed the father, burned the buildings. But they left the man's horse behind, and it carried your ranch's brand. Jace felt his blood turn to ice. "What?" "The Broken Arrow brand. Clear as day. My father's scouts tracked it back toward your ranch before losing the trail in the rocks." Taya's hand went to her knife, though she didn't draw it. "So now the council believes the ranch is involved. That the raids are coming from your people. They're planning a war party." "No." Jace tried to sit up straighter despite the pain. "No, that's impossible. The Broken Arrow doesn't raid." "We don't." "Then explain the horse." Taya's voice rose, then dropped back to a fierce whisper. "Explain why your brand was seen at the attack." "My people are ready to ride, Jace. They'll hit your ranch within 2 days. Men, women, anyone there will pay the price. Because it's a setup." The pieces clicked together in Jace's mind with horrible clarity. "The Driscolls. They're framing us. They probably stole horses from our south pasture weeks ago. We've been missing livestock, thought it was just rustlers. They're using them to spark a war." "Why?" Taya demanded. "Think about it." Jace leaned forward, ignoring the protest from his wounded side. "War between the Apache and the ranchers means chaos. It means the territorial government will step in, maybe even the cavalry. And in that chaos, who profits? The men who control the black market. The men who can move weapons and supplies and stolen goods without anyone looking too closely. The Driscolls don't just want money, Taya. They want chaos." Taya stared at him, and he could see her mind working through it, testing his logic against what she knew. "And if both sides slaughter each other," she said slowly, "no one will be left to challenge them." "Exactly." They sat in heavy silence. the weight of understanding pressing down on them. Outside, a coyote howled, a sound that might have been warning or lament. "I have to warn my ranch," Jace said. "They don't know what's coming. And I have to convince your father. My father won't listen to you." Taya's voice was flat. "You're white. You're the enemy. Even if I vouched for you, which would mean admitting I hid you, he wouldn't trust your words over the evidence of his own scouts. Then what do we do?" Taya stood, pacing the small cave like a caged mountain lion. Jace watched her think, saw the calculation behind her eyes. Finally, she stopped and turned to face him. "We go to Skeleton Canyon, tonight." "What?" "I can barely walk, and you said—" "I know what I said." Taya cut him off. "But the situation has changed. If we can find evidence, if we can prove the Driscolls are behind this, that they're setting both sides against each other, then maybe we can stop a war. And your brother? If he's there, we free him. If he's not, we find out where he is." Her jaw set in that stubborn line Jace had come to recognize. "Either way, we end this. Tonight." Jace tried to stand on his own and made it halfway up before his vision swam. Taya caught him, her arm around his waist, surprisingly strong. "You're not ready," she said, but there was no judgment in her voice, only assessment. "I'll have to be." Jace focused on breathing through the pain. "Because you're right. We're out of time." What followed was a preparation conducted in near total darkness. Taya had brought supplies, a second water skin, more dried meat, a small pouch of the medicine that had fought off his infection. She also brought something unexpected, a rifle. "My brother's," she explained, handing it to Jace. "He won't need it where he is now." "And you will." Jace checked the rifle by feel loaded, well-maintained, balanced. "Thank you. Don't thank me until we survive." Taya finished her preparations, then moved to the cave entrance. "We'll follow the ridgeline north, stay in the shadows. There are 2 horses hidden in a box canyon an hour from here. I took them this afternoon." "You stole horses from your own people?" "I borrowed them." A ghost of dark humor touched her voice. "If we succeed, I'll return them. If we fail, they won't matter anymore." They left the cave as the moon rose, a bright silver coin climbing into a sky scattered with stars. Taya led, moving with the silence of smoke, and Jace followed as best he could. Every step sent pain lancing through his side, but he gritted his teeth and pushed forward. His life was no longer the only thing at stake. Somewhere out there, innocent people, both white and Apache, were about to die unless they could stop what was coming. The journey to the hidden horses took 90 minutes instead of 60, with Jace needing to rest twice. But finally, they reached a narrow canyon where 2 Apache ponies waited, hobbled and calm. Taya had chosen well. Both animals were sturdy, trail-wise, with the quiet temperament needed for dangerous work. "Can you ride?" she asked, helping Jace approach the nearest horse. "I'll ride or die trying." Mounting was agony. Staying mounted as they started northwest toward Skeleton Canyon was worse. But Jace clamped down on every sound of pain, focused on the rhythm of the horse's gait, and let his body remember years of living in the saddle. They rode through country that grew steadily more hostile, harsh volcanic hills, studded with black rock formations that looked like the bones of ancient giants. The moonlight painted everything in shades of silver and shadow, making the landscape seem otherworldly, dangerous. Several times, Taya raised her hand and they froze, listening. Once, they heard riders in the distance and waited a full 20 minutes in the shadow of an outcrop before continuing. As they neared Skeleton Canyon, Taya reined in her horse and pointed to a low ridge ahead. "The mine is just beyond. We leave the horses here and go on foot." Dismounting was somehow worse than mounting had been. Jace's legs nearly buckled when his feet hit the ground, but Taya steadied him. For a moment, they stood close together in the darkness, and Jace could smell sage and wood smoke on her skin, could see starlight reflected in her eyes. "Last chance to turn back," she whispered. "Not a chance in hell," he replied. A smile flickered across her face, brief but genuine. "Good. because I wasn't turning back either. They moved forward together into the volcanic hills, toward a den of killers, toward answers that might save dozens of lives or condemn them both. The moon climbed higher, indifferent to human struggles, lighting their path with silver fire. Behind them, in an Apache camp 20 miles away, warriors sharpened their weapons and prepared for war. And ahead, in the darkness of Skeleton Canyon, something moved shadows within shadows, watching and waiting. The entrance to the old Spanish mine yawned like a mouth in the hillside, a black opening framed by weathered timbers that had stood for centuries. Jace and Taya crouched behind a tumble of volcanic rock 50 yards away, watching. The moon had climbed high enough now to cast sharp shadows, and in that silver light, they could see clear signs of occupation. 3 men sat around a low fire near the mine entrance, their voices carrying on the still night air, but too distant to make out words. A rope corral held maybe 20 horses, and boxes were stacked near a rough-built shed. Supplies, weapons, goods for trading or worse. Lamplight leaked from somewhere deeper in the mine, suggesting more men inside. How many? Taya whispered, her voice barely audible. I count 3 outside. Could be 10 more inside. Maybe 15. Jay studied the layout with tactical eyes trained by years of defending cattle against rustlers and predators. That shed probably a powder magazine. Those crates look like ammunition boxes. Guards on rotation? 2 at the entrance, 1 watching the horses. But I don't see ... He stopped, listening. The sound came from their left, a soft scuff of boot on stone. Both of them froze, pressing themselves flat against the rock. Footsteps approached, casual and unhurried. A man walked past their hiding place not 10 feet away, a rifle slung over his shoulder, whistling tunelessly. He was heading toward a cluster of rocks on the far side of the camp, probably a latrine area. Taya's hand went to her knife, but Jace caught her wrist and shook his head. They waited, barely breathing, until the man disappeared into the rocks. A minute later, he emerged and walked back toward the mine, still whistling. Sloppy, Taya whispered. He didn't even look. Arrogant. They don't think anyone would dare come here. Jace shifted his position, trying to ease the ache in his side. That could work for us, or get us killed. Taya scanned the camp again, her expression intent. We need to know if Kaya is here. And we need evidence of the frame job, both. The mine goes deep. If they're holding prisoners, it'll be inside where escape is harder. Jace pointed to a stack of supplies near the entrance. If we can get to those boxes, there might be paperwork, bills of lading, receipts. The Driscolls run their operation like a business. They keep records. You go for the boxes. I go inside for prisoners. Taya said it like it was already decided. Taya, no. If they catch you in there, they won't. Her eyes met his, dark and determined. I'm smaller, quieter. And you're still wounded. You'd never make it past the entrance without being seen. He wanted to argue, but she was right. Even moving this far had exhausted him, and the wound in his side was a constant throb of pain that slowed his reactions. All right, he agreed reluctantly, but we do this together. I create a distraction, draw them out. You slip inside, find your brother if he's there, and we both get out before they realize what's happened. What kind of distraction? Jace looked at the horse corral, then at the powder magazine, and a dangerous idea took shape. The kind that makes them think their camp is under attack. He explained quickly, a plan born of desperation and necessity. Taya listened, her expression unreadable, then nodded once. It might work. Or it might get us both killed. Story of this whole endeavor. Jace managed a grim smile. Ready? No, but let's do it anyway. They split up. Taya circled left, moving through the volcanic rocks with the fluid silence that seemed as natural to her as breathing. Jace went right, taking a longer route that brought him near the horse corral. His side screamed with every movement, and twice he had to stop and press his hand against the wound, feeling the wet seep of blood through the bandages. But he pushed forward, driven by necessity and the knowledge that turning back now meant death for dozens. It took him 20 minutes to reach a position near the shed. The guards had changed. The 3 men he'd seen earlier had been replaced by 2 others, younger and less alert, talking quietly by the fire. One of them laughed at something, the sound carrying clearly through the night. Jace found what he needed in the rocks near the shed, a piece of dried wood, oilcloth from some discarded supply, and a chunk of volcanic stone sharp enough to strike sparks. His hands shook as he worked, but finally he had a crude torch ready. He waited, watching the mine entrance, until he saw it, the briefest flicker of movement in the shadows. Taya, slipping past the guards like a ghost. She was inside. Time to make some noise. Jace struck sparks, coaxing the oilcloth to catch. Flames bloomed, small but bright. He held the torch to the corner of the shed's wall, where weathered wood met dry grass, and prayed the structure wasn't quite as full of gunpowder as it appeared. The fire caught faster than expected. Within seconds, flames were licking up the shed's side, and smoke began to pour into the night sky. "Fire!" Jace shouted, making his voice harsh and panicked. "Fire at the magazine!" The effect was instantaneous. Men poured from the mine entrance like disturbed hornets, 5, 6, 7 of them, all running toward the burning shed. Voices rose in alarm. Someone was screaming about the powder. Others were grabbing buckets, dirt, anything to fight the flames. In the chaos, Jace moved. He slipped through the confusion toward the supply crates near the entrance, staying low, using smoke as cover. His wound tore with every step, but adrenaline pushed him forward. He reached the boxes and began rifling through them with shaking hands. Papers, receipts, bills of lading. His fingers found a leather folder, and he grabbed it, stuffing it inside his shirt. No time to read, just take and run. "You!" The shout came from behind him. Jace spun to see one of the raiders, a man with a scarred face and a drawn pistol standing 10 feet away. Recognition flashed across the man's features. "You're that broken arrow cowboy. Thought we killed you." Jace's hand went to the rifle at his back, but he knew he'd never clear leather before the man fired. Time slowed. He could see the raider's finger tightening on the trigger, could see death written in the man's cold eyes. Then a knife appeared in the raider's throat. The man made a wet, gurgling sound and collapsed. Behind where he'd stood, Taya materialized from the shadows, her hand still extended from the throw. Blood spattered her arm. "Run!" she hissed. Now they ran. Behind them, shouts of discovery erupted. Someone had found the dead man. More voices joined the alarm, some still focused on the fire, others realizing they were under attack. A gunshot cracked, then another. Taya led them away from the mine entrance, not back the way they'd come, but along a narrow path that clung to the hillside. Jace followed, his lungs burning, his side a symphony of agony. He could hear pursuit behind them, boots on stone, angry voices, the metallic click of rifles being cocked. "There!" a voice shouted. 2 of them, moving north, more gunshots. A bullet spanged off rock near Jace's head, showering him with stone chips. He stumbled, nearly fell, but Taya's hand caught his arm and hauled him forward. They reached a narrow cleft in the volcanic rock, barely wide enough for a person to squeeze through. Taya pushed Jace into it first, then followed, just as a fusillade of shots hammered the hillside behind them. The cleft became a passage, dark and tight, forcing them to move sideways. Jace's wounded side scraped against rough stone, and he had to bite back a scream. Behind them, he could hear the raiders arguing. Some wanted to follow, others were calling them back to deal with the fire. The passage opened into a small box canyon, and there were the horses where they'd left them. Jace had never been so grateful to see anything in his life. They mounted, his hands slippery with blood now, his own blood, the wound torn open again, and kicked the horses into motion. They rode hard for an hour, pushing the animals through terrain that would have been treacherous even in full daylight. Only when they put several miles and 2 ridges between themselves and Skeleton Canyon did Taya finally rein in her horse and look back at Jace. He was barely staying in the saddle, swaying with each step of his mount. Blood had soaked through his shirt, dark and spreading. "Jace," her voice was sharp with concern. "I'm fine," he lied, but even forming the words took effort. "You're not." She dismounted quickly and moved to his side, helping him down before he could fall. They were in a shallow depression, rimmed with scrub cedar, not perfect concealment, but better than being exposed on the ridge. "Let me see." She peeled back his blood-soaked shirt, and even in the moonlight, Jace could see her expression tighten. The wound had torn open completely, and he was losing blood fast. "The medicine," he managed. In the saddlebag, Taya retrieved it and worked quickly, her hands steady despite the urgency. She packed the wound with fresh poultice, bound it tightly with strips torn from his own shirt. Her fingers moved with practiced precision, but Jace could see something else in her face, guilt, perhaps, or fear. "Did you find him?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Your brother, was he there?" Taya's hands paused for just a heartbeat. "No, but I found something else." She reached into her tunic and pulled out a small notebook, leather-bound, stained with use. One of the guards had it. A ledger, names, dates, locations. She opened it, and even in the dim light, Jace could see rows of careful handwriting. Prisoners they've taken, where they were sold, how much they were paid. "Kaya?" "Listed here." Taya's finger traced a line. "Sold to a mining operation in the Sangre de Cristo Mountains. 3 months ago." Her voice cracked, just slightly. "He's alive, Jace, or he was 3 months ago." "That's good," Jace said, trying to focus through the fog of pain and blood loss. "That's good news. We can..." "There's more." Taya turned pages, found what she was looking for. "Look at this." She held the book where Jace could see. Names and dates, attacks planned and executed. And there, in neat script, Apache raid on Broken Arrow, horses marked with B, a brand to be used in strike on Freeman Homestead, Chief Nako to be blamed. War to commence. Proof, Jace breathed. They wrote down their whole damn plan. And here, Taya flipped more pages. List of weapons sales, including to Apache. They've been selling guns to both sides, planning to set us against each other. The leather folder Jace had grabbed was still tucked in his shirt. With shaking hands, he pulled it out and opened it. More evidence, receipts, letters of agreement, even a map showing planned attack sites. The Driscoll brothers had been methodical in their conspiracy, and their arrogance had led them to keep detailed records. "We have everything we need," Taya said, wonder in her voice. "Everything to prove what they've done. To stop the war before it starts. If we can get this to the right people." Jace's vision was starting to blur at the edges. "Your father, the territorial marshal. You have to stay alive first." Taya closed the ledger and tucked it safely away. "Rest now. At dawn, we ride for my father's camp. They'll kill me on sight," Jace pointed out weakly. "Not if I'm with you." Taya's jaw set in that stubborn line. "You saved my life back there. The raider had you dead to rights, and you didn't run. You grabbed the evidence we needed. Now it's my turn to save yours. That makes us even." "No." She met his eyes, and in that moment, something passed between them, understanding, respect, the beginning of something that went deeper than alliance. "It doesn't, because you came here knowing you might die. You could have ridden for your ranch, warned them, saved your own people, but you rode with me instead. For my brother. For strangers you've never met. Couldn't let you go alone," Jay said simply. Taya was quiet for a long moment. Then she did something unexpected. She reached out and touched his face, her palm cool against his fevered skin. "Sleep," she commanded softly. "I'll watch. And when dawn comes, we finish this. Together." Jace wanted to argue, wanted to insist on taking a watch shift, but his body had other ideas. Exhaustion crashed over him like a wave, and darkness pulled him under. He dreamed of fire and blood, of faces he'd failed to save and faces he might still save. And through it all, a constant presence, a shadow that watched and protected, that spoke in whispers about brothers and promises and debts that went deeper than life itself. When he woke, the eastern sky was just beginning to lighten, painting the desert in shades of rose and gold. Taya sat nearby, her rifle across her knees, watching the horizon. She looked tired but alert, and when she saw he was awake, something like relief crossed her face. "How do you feel?" she asked. "Like I've been shot and rode 30 miles. Jace tried to sit up, managed it on the second attempt. "But I'm alive. Good, because today we face my father. And if we fail ... double quotes, she didn't finish the sentence. "Then we fail together," Jace said. "And at least we'll have tried." Taya nodded, a ghost of a smile touching her lips. "At least we'll have tried." They mounted up as the sun broke free of the horizon, painting the world in gold and crimson. Ahead lay the Apache camp, and within it, a chief who would need to be convinced, warriors who wanted blood, and a fragile chance to prevent a war that would destroy everything. Behind them lay Skeleton Canyon and the men who'd built their fortune on suffering. But those men didn't know yet what they'd lost in the night, the evidence that would damn them, the proof that would unravel their careful plans. The game had changed, the hunted had become the hunters. And as Jace and Taya rode toward whatever fate awaited them, the desert morning sang with the promise of justice or vengeance. Perhaps, in this hard land, they were the same thing. The Apache camp appeared as they crested the final ridge, a cluster of lodges arranged in careful patterns near a spring-fed canyon, smoke rising from morning fires, horses grazing in a rope corral. From this distance, it looked peaceful, almost idyllic. But Jace could see armed men moving between the lodges, could sense the tension that hung over the camp like smoke. "They're preparing," Taya said quietly, reading the same signs. "War preparations. See how the women are packing supplies? The warriors checking weapons? We have maybe hours before they ride. Then we'd better make those hours count." Jace straightened in his saddle despite the pain, trying to look strong, capable. First impressions might mean the difference between being heard and being killed on sight. They rode down the slope openly, making no attempt at stealth. Better to be seen coming than to surprise armed and nervous warriors. Within minutes, a shout went up from the camp. Figures turned toward them. Weapons were raised. 3 warriors rode out to intercept them, moving fast, rifles ready. Jace recognized one of them from Taya's descriptions, Nako, her cousin, the master tracker. He was lean and hard as desert ironwood, with eyes that missed nothing. Those eyes fixed on Jace with an intensity that was almost physical. "Taya." Nako's voice was flat, emotionless. But Jace heard the current of anger beneath. "You bring a white man to our camp, the same white man we've been hunting. I should kill him now. You should hear us first," Taya replied, her voice calm but firm. "Both of us. What we carry changes everything, cousin. The only thing that will change is how he dies." Another warrior spat the words, his hand tight on his rifle. "His people killed the Freemans. Used horses with their ranch brand. We have proof. You have lies." Taya guided her horse forward until she was alongside Nako, ignoring the weapons pointed at her. "The proof you have was planted. The raids were staged. And we can prove it, but only if you take us to my father. Now." Nako studied her for a long moment, his gaze flicking between Taya and Jace. "You've been gone 4 days. 4 days we searched for you, thought you taken or killed. And you return with our enemy?" "I return with the truth." Taya held up the leather ledger. "This holds names, dates, plans. Evidence of a conspiracy to start war between our peoples. If you love your people, if you want to protect them rather than lead them to slaughter, you will take us to the chief." Silence stretched between them, broken only by the whisper of wind through sage and the distant cry of a hawk. Jace could feel the weight of decision hanging in the air. These men could kill him right here, right now, and no one would stop them. His life depended on whatever authority Taya carried with her own people, on whatever trust existed between her and her cousin. Finally, Nako lowered his rifle, not completely, but enough. "The chief will decide," he said. "But if this is deception, Taya, you will share his fate. You understand this?" "I understand," no hesitation in her voice. "I stake my honor on what we bring." They rode into camp under heavy guard, warriors on all sides, weapons ready. Women and children stopped to stare. Jace could feel the weight of their gazes: curiosity, fear, anger. An old woman spat in the dirt as they passed. A young warrior made a gesture Jace recognized as a death curse. The chief's lodge stood at the camp's heart, larger than the others, its entrance facing east toward the rising sun. Guards stood on either side, and as they approached, one of them ducked inside. Moments later, he emerged and gestured them forward. "Only Taya and the white man," Nako said. "The rest of us wait here." Jace dismounted carefully, trying not to show how much the movement hurt. Taya was beside him instantly, her hand on his elbow steadying him, or perhaps reminding the watchers that they stood together. They walked to the lodge entrance, ducked through the opening, and entered. The interior was dim after the bright morning sun, lit by a small fire in the center. Smoke rose through an opening in the roof, carrying the scent of cedar. Around the fire sat 7 men, the chief and his council. Jace recognized Taya's father immediately. He had her eyes, the same dark intensity, but weathered by age and hardened by the weight of leadership. Chief Nantai looked at his daughter for a long moment before speaking. When he did, his voice carried a depth of pain that cut deeper than any anger. "You bring shame to this lodge, daughter. To hide an enemy. To stand with him against your own people." He gestured to Jace. "Give me one reason why I should not kill him now and cast you out for betrayal." "Because he is not the enemy, father." Taya stepped forward, pulling the ledger from her tunic. "And because what we bring will save dozens of lives, Apache and white both." She held out the ledger. For a moment, Jace thought the chief would refuse it. Then Nanta reached out and took the book, opening it carefully. His eyes scanned the pages, and Jace watched understanding dawn across his face. First confusion, then recognition, then cold fury. "What is this?" Nantali demanded. "The truth." Taya knelt by the fire, and Jace followed her lead, kneeling despite the protest from his wounded side. "For 6 moons, we believed the white ranchers were our enemies. But the attacks, all of them, were orchestrated by men who profit from chaos. They took Kaya, they killed the Freemans. They stole horses from the Broken Arrow Ranch and used them to frame innocent men. Why?" One of the council members leaned forward. "Why would they do this?" "War is profitable," Jace spoke for the first time, his voice steady despite his exhaustion. "When Apache and settlers are killing each other, no one looks at the real criminals. The Driscoll brothers run guns, whiskey, stolen goods. They take prisoners and sell them to mining operations. They've built an empire on suffering, and they need chaos to keep it hidden." "This man could be lying," another council member said. "His people have lied before. Then look at the evidence." Taya's voice rang with conviction. "The ledger lists every raid, every attack. It names the men who carried them out, white men pretending to be Apache who were paid to attack settlers. It's all there, written in their own hand. They were arrogant enough to keep records." Chief Nante continued reading, turning pages with increasing focus. The other council members passed the book between them, their faces grave. Jace watched them process the information, saw the moment when belief began to overtake suspicion. "There's more," Taya continued. She retrieved the leather folder from Jace's shirt and handed it over. "Maps, plans, receipts for weapons sold to both sides. They wanted us to destroy each other while they counted their money. And my son?" Nantai's voice broke slightly. "Kaya, does it say what happened to my son?" "He lives, father." Taya's voice was thick with emotion. "Or he lived 3 months ago. He was sold to a mining operation in the Sangre de Cristo Mountains." There's a name, a location. We can find him." The chief closed his eyes for a moment, and Jace saw a father's grief warring with a leader's composure. When Nante opened his eyes again, they were wet but fierce. "You risked everything for this," he said to Taya. "Your honor, your place among us." "Why?" "Because doing nothing would have destroyed us all." Taya met her father's gaze without flinching. Apache would have ridden against the ranches. The ranches would have called in the cavalry. Blood would have soaked the desert, and at the end, the only winners would be the men who started it all. I couldn't let that happen. And him? Nantamnate pointed at Jace. "What is he to you?" Taya glanced at Jace, and something passed between them, an understanding too complex for simple words. He is someone who chose honor over safety, who rode into danger to help a woman find her brother, even though he owed us nothing. He is ... double quotes. She paused, searching for the right words. He is proof that enemies can become allies when they fight for something larger than themselves. Silence filled the lodge, broken only by the crackle of the fire. Jace could feel the weight of judgment pressing down on him, could sense the council weighing his life against their principles, their pain, their need for justice. Finally, one of the elders spoke, an old man with a face like carved stone and eyes that had seen too many winters. "I remember the treaty of 40 years ago," he said, his voice raspy but clear. "When my father rode with the Bluecoats against a common enemy. It was not friendship, but it was honor. What this young man has done, it is the same. Not friendship, perhaps, but honor. Honor that has cost him blood," another elder added, gesturing to the crimson stain spreading through Jace's shirt. "He did not ride here for profit or glory. He rode because it was right." Nante studied Jace for a long moment, his gaze penetrating. "You know that if I spare you, some will call me weak. Some will say I've betrayed our people's blood." "I know," Jace said quietly. "But I also know that true strength isn't in how many enemies you kill. It's in how many wars you prevent." A ghost of a smile touched the chief's lips, brief but genuine. "My daughter chose her ally well." He stood, and the council stood with him. "The war party will not ride not against the ranches, but it will ride against the true enemy. The Skeleton Canyon, these Driscoll brothers. They have made themselves our target." "Father, wait." Taya rose quickly. "They're armed and fortified. A direct attack would fail, yes." Nante's expression hardened. "Which is why we will not attack directly. We will do what Apache do best. We will use the land itself as our weapon. But first, we need information, numbers, defenses, weaknesses. I can provide some of that," Jace offered. "I saw their setup, their routines. And I know others who would help men from my ranch who've wanted justice against the Driscolls for months. You would ride with us?" Nako had entered the lodge silently, and now he studied Jace with new respect. "Against your own people?" "They're not my people." Jace's voice was hard as stone. "My people are honest ranchers trying to make a living. These men are murderers and slavers. I'll ride against them gladly." Nante nodded slowly. "Then we have much to plan. But first ... he gestured to one of the guards. "Have Singing Crow come. This white man needs proper healing, or he'll die before he can ride again. And father," Taya said quietly, "there's one more thing, Kaya. The ledger says where he is. While we plan against Skeleton Canyon, could we send riders to?" "Already done." Nante's voice softened. "Before you finished speaking, I made the decision. Nako, take 2 of our best men. Ride north to the Sangre de Cristo. Find my son and bring him home." Nako nodded, but his eyes were on Taya. "You won't come?" "I can't." Taya's voice was steady but sad. "I started this. I have to see it finished. Bring Kaya home, cousin. Tell him I'll be waiting." As Nako left to prepare for his journey, a woman entered the lodge, ancient, but with eyes that burned with sharp intelligence. Singing Crow, the tribe's greatest healer. She took one look at Jace's blood-soaked side and made a disapproving sound deep in her throat. "Foolish boy, riding with wounds like this. You should be dead. I've been told that before, Jace managed through gritted teeth as she began examining the injury. Hold him, Singing Crow commanded, and 2 warriors moved to grip Jace's arms. This will hurt. She wasn't lying. The old woman's healing methods were effective but far from gentle. Jace felt fire explode through his side as she cleaned and repacked the wound with herbs that burned like acid. Sweat poured down his face, and his vision went gray at the edges, but he didn't scream. Couldn't scream, not here, not in front of these people who were deciding whether he deserved to live. Through the haze of pain, he felt a hand slip into his Taya's hand, squeezing tight, lending him her strength. He held on like a drowning man holds driftwood, and somehow that connection made it bearable. Finally, mercifully, Singing Crow finished. He'll live, she announced, as if this were only mildly surprising. If he rests, drinks water, doesn't do anything stupid. Which, looking at him, he probably will. I usually do, Jace admitted, his voice weak but steady. Despite everything, the pain, the danger, the uncertainty, several of the warriors smiled. It was a small thing, that shared moment of dark humor, but Jace felt something shift in the lodge. Not acceptance, not yet, but perhaps the first small crack in the wall of hostility. Chief Nanta surveyed his council, then looked at Jace and Taya. Rest today. Tonight, we plan. Tomorrow we begin gathering our allies, both Apache and White. And when we're ready, we strike at Skeleton Canyon like thunder from a clear sky. He paused, then added, and when it's done, when justice has been served, you will always have safe passage through our lands, Jace Holloway. You and any who ride under your banner. This I swear. Thank you, Jace said simply, knowing that those words carried weight that went far beyond mere politeness. As they left the chief's lodge, supported by warriors who'd entered as captors, but now treated him with grudging respect, Jace felt Taya beside him, her presence constant and sure. You did well, she said quietly. My father doesn't give his respect easily. Neither does his daughter, Jace replied. Taya smiled a real smile this time, warm and genuine. No, she doesn't. The morning sun climbed higher, burning away the last of the dawn chill. Across the camp, preparations began not for war now, but for something more precise, more deadly. Justice, riding on the desert wind, heading straight for the hearts of those who'd thought themselves untouchable. And at the center of it all, a wounded cowboy and an Apache woman who'd saved each other's lives more than once, preparing to save something even more precious, the peace between 2 peoples who'd been manipulated into hatred. The storm was coming to Skeleton Canyon, and the Driscoll brothers would never see it until the thunder was already overhead. 2 days later, a strange gathering assembled in a box canyon 10 miles from the Apache camp, a place of neutral ground where old enemies could meet without breaking peace protocols. Jace sat his horse beside Taya, watching as 3 separate groups converged on the canyon floor like streams meeting to form a river. From the north came Broken Arrow riders, 8 men led by Frank Morrison, the ranch foreman, a gray-haired veteran who'd worked cattle and fought Comanche in his youth. They rode wary and tense, hands never far from their weapons. When Morrison saw Jace alive, his weathered face split into a grin. Thought you were dead, boy, he called. When your horse came back without you, we figured the worst. Nearly was, Jace replied. Long story, Frank, but I need you to trust me on what comes next. From the east came a smaller group, 3 men wearing tin stars on their vests. Deputies from Red Rock Station, sent by Marshal Cordell when Jace had managed to get a message through via a Navajo trader. The marshal himself had ridden with them, a barrel-chested man with a drooping mustache and eyes that had seen too much and believed too little. This better be worth the ride, Holloway, Cordell growled. You sent word of evidence against the Driscolls. I've been trying to pin something on those bastards for 3 years. If this is another dead end, it's not, Jace assured him. I've got proof, written records. Names, dates, everything. The third group was the largest 20 Apache warriors led by Chief Nante himself, with Taya riding at his right hand. The ranchers' hands went immediately to their weapons when they saw the war party. The deputies' rifles came up. For a moment, the canyon held its breath, balanced on the edge of violence. "Hold!" Jace's voice cracked like a whip. He spurred his horse forward, placing himself between the groups. "Everyone, hold!" "Jace, what the hell?" Morrison's voice was tight with tension. "We're here to help you, but if this is a trap, it's not a trap. It's a reckoning." Jace turned his horse in a slow circle, making sure every man could see his face, hear his words. "For months, we've all been played. Apache raiding whites. Whites raiding Apache. Everyone bleeding, everyone angry, and the only winners were the men who set us against each other. The Driscolls." Marshal Cordell said, understanding dawning in his eyes. "The Driscolls," Jace confirmed. He reached inside his shirt and pulled out the leather ledger, holding it high. "This is their record book. Every raid they staged. Every attack they orchestrated. They've been selling weapons to both sides, kidnapping prisoners for sale to Mexican mines, and getting rich while we killed each other. Let me see that." Cordell reached for the book and Jace handed it over. The marshal's eyes scanned the pages, and his expression darkened with each line he read. Jesus Christ. This is... They documented everything. Arrogance. Chief Nantes spoke from his position at the head of the Apache riders, his English accented but clear. They believed themselves too powerful to face justice. They will learn otherwise. Morrison studied the chief with wary respect. "I've heard of you, Nante. Heard you're a fair man, even in war. If what Jace says is true, if the Driscolls really took your boy..." "They took him," Taya interrupted, her voice fierce. "Along with dozens of others, white and Apache both. The ledger lists them all. Some were sold to mines. Others ... She swallowed hard. "Others simply disappeared." A murmur ran through all three groups: anger, recognition, shared grief. More than one man there had lost someone to unexplained raids, to attacks that never quite made sense. "So what are you proposing?" one of the deputies asked. "We can't just ride on Skeleton Canyon with a mixed force. The legal ramifications alone." "I don't give a damn about legal ramifications." Marshal Cordell snapped the ledger shut. "This is my jurisdiction, and these men, these animals, have been operating under my nose for years. As far as I'm concerned, anyone who rides against Skeleton Canyon is deputized as of now. Apache or white, makes no difference to me. The marshal is wise," Nante said, a hint of dry humor in his voice. "Perhaps the law can serve justice after all." They spent the next hour planning. Jace and Taya described everything they'd seen at the mine: the layout, the guards, the supplies. Morrison contributed tactical knowledge from years of range warfare. The Apache warriors offered insights on the terrain, secret approaches, ways to move unseen through country they knew like the backs of their hands. "They'll have sentries," one of the broken arrow hands pointed out. "Can't surprise them easy. Leave the sentries to us," a young Apache warrior said. His name was Dakota, the man who'd been courting Taya. He looked at her with an expression that mixed admiration and something more complicated. "We can move silent. Be on them before they know death comes." The plan that emerged was elegant in its simplicity. The Apache would approach from three sides, eliminating sentries and cutting off escape routes. The ranchers and deputies would come from the main trail visible, expected, drawing attention. And when the Driscoll's men were focused on the obvious threat, the trap would spring shut. "What about prisoners?" Taya asked. "The ledger says they keep captives in the deep mine shafts. If shooting starts, that's why I go in first." Jace's words dropped into the planning like stones in still water. "Absolutely not," Taya said flatly. "It has to be me." Jace met her eyes, then looked around the circle of men. "The Driscolls know I survived their first attack. They'll be expecting me to come for revenge. If I ride in alone, pretending to surrender, pretending to bargain, I can get close. Find where they keep the prisoners. Then, when you attack, I'll get them out. Not suicide, Morrison said bluntly. Boy, I admire your courage, but it's the only way to make sure innocents don't die in the crossfire. Jace's jaw was set. I'm doing this. Then you don't do it alone. Taya stepped forward, her expression as stubborn as his. I'm coming with you. Taya, no. Chief Nantai's voice was sharp. You've risked enough. With respect, father. This isn't your decision. Taya faced her father with the same fierce determination Jace had seen in the cave, in Skeleton Canyon, in every moment since they'd met. Kaya isn't the only prisoner they've taken. Other families have lost sons, daughters, brothers. Someone needs to make sure they all get out safely. And I'm the best choice. She's right, Dakota said quietly. Everyone turned to look at him. He met Taya's eyes, and something passed between them, not love perhaps, but understanding. None of us move quieter. None of us are better with healing if prisoners are hurt. Let her go, Chief. Nantai looked at his daughter for a long moment, and Jace saw a father's fear warring with the chief's pragmatism. Finally, the chief nodded once, sharp and final. But you take 2 warriors with you. Dakota and Nito. They stay close, hidden, ready to pull you out if it goes wrong. Agreed, Taya said. They finalized the details: timing, signals, fallback positions. The attack would come in 2 days, at dawn, when the Driscoll's men would be groggy and slow from the night before. Jace and Taya would approach the evening prior, asking for parley, buying time for the others to get in position. As the meeting broke up, Morrison pulled Jace aside. You sure about this, son? There's no shame in letting someone else take the risk. I'm sure. Frank, Jace looked across the canyon to where Taya stood with her father, speaking quietly. Someone has to do it. Might as well be someone who's already been shot once. Morrison followed his gaze and nodded slowly. That Apache woman. She's something special, isn't she? Yeah, Jace said softly. She really is. That evening, back at the Apache camp, Jace found Taya sitting alone on a ridge overlooking the desert. The sun was setting, painting the sky in colors that seemed too beautiful for a world that held so much pain. She didn't turn as he approached, but she shifted slightly, making room for him to sit beside her. Tomorrow we ride back toward Skeleton Canyon, she said, watching the sunset. And maybe we don't ride back. Maybe. Jace sat beside her, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. But we might. And if we do, we'll have saved a lot of lives. Is that enough? Taya's voice was quiet, reflective. To die knowing you did the right thing? I don't know. But it's more than most people get. Jace was quiet for a moment, then added, for what it's worth, I'm glad I met you. Even if it was because I was bleeding out in the desert. Taya turned to look at him, and in the fading light, her eyes were soft in a way he'd never seen before. I'm glad too. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? I don't know. Someone harder, maybe. Someone who saw Apache as just enemies to be fought. She looked back at the sunset. Instead, I found someone who sees people. Who's willing to die for strangers because it's the right thing to do. Learned it from you, Jace said. You could have left me to die. Instead, you risked everything to save me. That kind of courage. It changes a person. They sat in comfortable silence as the sun touched the horizon, spilling gold and crimson across the desert. In the camp below, fires were being lit, and the smell of cooking food drifted up on the evening breeze. Life continuing, despite everything. Because that's what life did, it persisted, even in the face of death. Jace? Taya's voice was barely above a whisper. Yeah? If we survive this... would you come back? To visit, I mean. My father has granted you safe passage. You could... I'd like that, Jace interrupted gently. I'd like that very much. Taya smiled, a genuine, warm smile that transformed her face. For just a moment, she wasn't a warrior or a chief's daughter or a woman bent on vengeance. She was just Taya, young and alive and full of hope that tomorrow might bring something better than today. They watched the sun disappear below the horizon together, neither speaking, both understanding that words would only diminish what passed between them in that moment. Understanding, connection, the recognition that two souls from different worlds had found common ground in the most unlikely of places. When full darkness fell and the first stars emerged, they walked back to camp together. Tomorrow would bring danger. The day after might bring death. But tonight, for just a few hours, they had peace. And in the hard country of the frontier, peace was worth more than gold. The sun was dropping toward the western ridges when Jace and Taya rode up the trail towards Skeleton Canyon. Behind them, hidden in the rocks and gullies, Dakota and Nito followed like shadows, close enough to help if needed, far enough to remain unseen. And miles back, the combined force of Apache warriors, ranchers, and deputies was moving into position, spreading out through the volcanic hills like a net drawing closed. Jace's side still ached with every movement, but Singing Crow's medicines had worked their magic. The wound was healing clean, the fever had broken, and though he was far from full strength, he could ride and shoot if it came to that. "Remember the plan," Taya said quietly as they neared the mine entrance. "We're here to bargain. You want protection from my people. I want information about Kaya. We keep them talking until dawn. And if they decide to just kill us instead," Jace asked, "then Dakota and Nito get us out. Or die trying," she said it matter-of-factly, as if discussing the weather. "But the Driscolls are businessmen first. They'll want to know what we know before they act." The mine entrance loomed ahead, and this time there were more guards, at least 6 visible, with probably more inside. The fire damage from their last visit had been repaired, and new supplies were stacked near the entrance. If anything, security looked tighter than before. A guard spotted them and called out a challenge. "That's far enough. State your business." "We're here to see Kane Driscoll," Jace called back, keeping his hands visible and away from his rifle. "Tell him Jace Holloway wants to make a deal." That got a reaction. The guards exchanged glances, and one of them disappeared into the mine at a run. The others kept their weapons trained on Jace and Taya, fingers on triggers, eyes hard with suspicion. "Who's the squaw?" another guard demanded. "My guide," Jace said smoothly, ignoring the slur. "And my leverage. If the Driscolls want to avoid a war that'll bring the cavalry down on everyone's heads, they'll hear what I have to say." 5 minutes passed. 10. Jace could feel sweat trickling down his back despite the evening cool. Beside him, Taya sat her horse with perfect stillness, but he could sense the coiled tension in her, ready to explode into action at the first sign of betrayal. Finally, a man emerged from the mine tall, well-dressed in a way that seemed absurdly out of place in this rough country. Kane Driscoll, Jace recognized him from wanted posters. The older of the two brothers, with silver threading his dark hair and eyes like chips of blue ice. Jace Holloway. Kane's voice was smooth, educated, completely at odds with his profession. "I heard you were dead. My men were quite certain they'd killed you. Your men were wrong." Jace met that cold gaze steadily. "As they've been wrong about a lot of things. Like thinking they could start a war without consequences." Kane smiled, but it never reached his eyes. "Strong words from a man who's surrounded by my guns. What makes you think I won't just finish what my men started? Because I'm here voluntarily. Because I brought something you want." Jace reached slowly into his shirt and pulled out a folded paper, not the ledger, just a single page copied from it. A list of names. Every man who's worked for you in the last 6 months. Every raid, every attack, every crime documented in detail. And I know where the original is. Kane's smile faltered. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Yes, you do. Your brother keeps excellent records. Almost obsessively detailed." Jace let that sink in. "Right now, that ledger is in the hands of someone who knows how to use it. If anything happens to me, it goes to the territorial marshal, the army, and every newspaper between here and Santa Fe. Your operation is finished. And what do you want?" Kane asked, his voice carefully controlled. "Safe passage for my ranch, An end to the raids. And information. Jace gestured to Taya. This woman's brother was taken 6 months ago. The ledger says he was sold to a mining operation. We want details, which mine, who bought him, how to find him. Kane studied them both, calculation visible behind his eyes. That's a lot to ask for one ledger. It's a small price to avoid hanging, Jace countered. For a long moment, the canyon held its breath. Then Kane laughed, a sound devoid of genuine humor. You've got stones, Holloway, I'll give you that. Come inside. We'll talk. But the woman stays out here with my men. No deal. Jace's voice was flat. We both come in, or we both leave. Your choice. Fine. Kane gestured toward the mine entrance. But understand, if you try anything at all, my men have orders to kill you both. Slowly. They dismounted and walked toward the mine, guards falling in around them. Jace caught a glimpse of movement in the rocks to their left, probably Dakota, staying close. The knowledge was reassuring, but also dangerous. If the guards spotted the Apache warriors, the shooting would start immediately. The mine interior was larger than Jace had expected. The main chamber had been expanded, shored up with new timbers, and converted into a crude headquarters. Lanterns hung from hooks in the walls, casting dancing shadows. Crates were stacked along the sides, weapons, ammunition, supplies. And at the far end, sitting behind a makeshift desk, was a man who could only be Ethan Driscoll. He was younger than Kane, heavier, with a mean cast to his features. When he saw Jace, his hand went immediately to the pistol on his hip. That's the bastard who killed Ray and set fire to our shed, Ethan growled. Easy, brother. Kane raised a calming hand. Mr. Holloway here has come to negotiate. Negotiate? Ethan's laugh was ugly. We should gut him and leave him for the buzzards, perhaps. But first, let's hear what he has to say. Kane gestured to 2 chairs in front of the desk. Sit. Tell me about this ledger. Jace and Taya sat, acutely aware of the guards behind them, the guns pointed at their backs. Jace kept his posture relaxed, non-threatening, even as every nerve screamed danger. The ledger proves you've been orchestrating raids on both sides, Jace began. Framing the Broken Arrow, framing the Apache, selling weapons to both sides to make sure the war stays hot. It's brilliant, in a sick kind of way. But it's also evidence that'll hang you both. If it exists, Kane said smoothly. Oh, it exists. Your man was carrying it when my friend here took it from him. Jace nodded toward Taya. Right before she put a knife in his throat, Ethan surged to his feet, hand on his gun. You killed Ray? He was going to kill me, Jace said calmly. Self-defense. But that's not the point. The point is, we have the evidence, and we're willing to make it disappear for a price. You want money, King said. It wasn't a question. We want the boy. Taya spoke for the first time since entering the mine, her voice low and dangerous. Kaya, 15 winters. Apache, you took him 6 moons ago and sold him. Tell us where. And the ledger disappears. Kane and Ethan exchanged glances. Ethan shook his head slightly, but Kane was thinking, weighing options. Even if we knew where one Apache boy was sold, Kane said carefully, that information is worth more than you're offering. The ledger goes away, you say? What about the raids? The ongoing ... business arrangement. The raids stop, Jace said firmly. At least against the Broken Arrow and the Apache camps. You can operate your gun running elsewhere. We don't care about that. We just want to be left alone. And the marshal? The army? Never hear about any of this. As far as they know, the raids just ... stopped. Mystery solved. Everyone goes home happy. It was a lie, of course. Marshal Cordell was outside right now with deputies and an arrest warrant. But the Driscolls didn't need to know that. They just needed to keep talking until dawn. Kane leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers. It's an interesting proposition. But I have a counter-proposal. You give me the ledger right now, and I let you both walk out of here alive. Refuse, and my men start shooting. Your choice. Can't do that. Jace kept his voice steady. The ledger isn't here. It's with someone who'll only release it on my signal. Kill us, and it goes straight to the authorities. You're bluffing, Ethan snarled. Maybe. You willing to bet your life on it? Jace met his gaze without flinching. Because I've already died once in your desert. I'm not afraid to do it again, but you've got something to lose. Money, power, your whole operation. Are you ready to throw all that away? The silence stretched. Outside, Jace could hear the wind beginning to pick up, whistling through the canyon. How many hours until dawn? 4? 5? He had to keep them talking, keep them engaged, until the sun rose and hell came with it. Tell you what, Kane said finally. Let's test your resolve. Bring them in. A side door opened, and guards dragged in 3 prisoners, 2 Mexican men and a white woman, all thin and filthy, their clothes ragged. They were shackled at the wrists and ankles, and they moved with the defeated shuffle of people who'd given up hope. These are my current inventory, Kane said conversationally, as if discussing cattle, scheduled to be sold next week. The men go to a silver mine in Sonora. The woman ... He shrugged. She has other value. Now here's my test, Mr. Holloway. I'm going to have my brother shoot one of them. Right now. And if you don't hand over the ledger immediately after, I'll have him shoot another, then another, until you give me what I want or run out of prisoners. Your choice. Taya's hand moved toward her knife, but Jace caught her wrist under the table. Not yet. Not yet. You're bluffing, Jace said, praying he was right. Am I? Kane nodded to Ethan, who drew his pistol and cocked it. He aimed at the nearest Mexican prisoner, a young man who couldn't have been more than 20. Wait, Jace's mind raced. You shoot them, you lose the money from the sale. That's thousands of dollars you're throwing away just to prove a point. True, Kane agreed. But principles matter in business, Mr. Holloway. If word gets out that I can be threatened, that I back down from pressure, I lose far more than a few $1,000s. I lose respect, fear, control. He nodded to Ethan again. Do it. Ethan's finger tightened on the trigger. Sangre de Cristo. Taya's voice rang out, desperate and loud. The boy was sold to the Esperanza mine in the Sangre de Cristo Mountains. 3 months ago. That's what your ledger says. Ethan paused, looking to his brother. Kane's eyes narrowed. How do you know that? He asked quietly. Because I read the whole damn ledger, Taya said, standing slowly. Every page, every name. Including yours, Kane Driscoll. And your brother's. And every man who works for you. It's all documented. Where you live, where your money is hidden, every crime you've committed for 3 years. You think we came here with just one copy? We came here with knowledge. And if we don't walk out, that knowledge spreads to everyone who wants you dead, which, by my count, includes about 500 Apache warriors, 3 ranches, and the territorial government. Kane stood as well, his composure finally cracking. You're lying. Am I? Taya took a step forward, ignoring the guard's weapons. The Esperanza mine is owned by Francisco Gutierrez. You sold him 8 prisoners over the last year, 6 Apache, 2 white. You were paid $75 per head. The transaction was recorded on July 15th. Kaya was number 6 on the list. She recited it all from memory, every detail perfect. Want me to keep going? I can tell you about the guns you sold to Red Sky's band, the horses you stole from the Carlson Ranch, the whiskey you traded to the Navajo, every single crime. The color had drained from Kane's face. Beside him, Ethan looked ready to start shooting everyone in sight. You've made a mistake coming here, Kane said, his voice low and deadly. A fatal mistake. Whatever happens to us, you'll never leave this canyon alive. Maybe not, Jace agreed, standing to join Taya. But we've accomplished what we came for. We've confirmed the information. We've seen your prisoners. And we've kept you busy long enough. Long enough for what? Ethan demanded. Jace smiled cold and hard. Long enough for your enemies to surround this place. Long enough for dawn to come. Long enough for justice to arrive. Understanding dawned in Kane's eyes, followed immediately by rage. Kill them both now. Guards raised their weapons. Ethan's pistol swung toward Jace's chest. And in that frozen moment before the shooting started, Jace thought of his ranch, of his dead friends, of Taya's brother somewhere in a Mexican mine. He thought of all the people who'd suffered because of the men standing before him. He didn't regret coming here. He only regretted that he might not live to see the Driscolls brought to justice. Then three things happened simultaneously. The prisoners who weren't as defeated as they'd appeared dropped to the floor. A war cry split the air outside, followed immediately by the crack of rifle fire. And Dakota and Nito burst through the mine entrance, weapons blazing, with the fury of the Apache people at their backs. The battle for Skeleton Canyon had begun. Chaos erupted in the mine chamber. Jace threw himself at Taya, dragging her down behind Kane's desk as bullets whined through the air where they'd been standing. Guards spun toward the entrance, returning fire at Dakota and Nito. The Apache warriors were already moving, rolling behind cover, their shots precise despite the poor light. Ethan Driscoll fired twice at Jace's position, the heavy slugs punching through the desk and sending splinters flying. Jace rolled left, came up with his borrowed rifle, and fired back. He missed Ethan but hit a guard behind him, sending the man spinning to the ground. The prisoners! Taya shouted over the gunfire. She was already moving, staying low, heading for the shackled captives who'd flattened themselves against the far wall. Jace provided covering fire, shooting at muzzle flashes in the smoke-filled chamber. His wounded side screamed with every recoil, but he ignored it, focusing on keeping the Driscoll's men pinned while Taya worked on the prisoners' chains. Outside, the sound of battle intensified. War cries mixed with gunfire and screams. The Apache warriors were hitting the mine from multiple angles, and Jace could hear Morrison's voice bellowing orders, meaning the ranchers had joined the fight. The net was closing. "We need to move," Dakota called from the entrance. More men coming from the deep tunnels. He was right. Jace could hear boots pounding on stone, echoing from the mine's deeper passages. The Driscolls had more men than they'd anticipated, and they were coming fast. Kane Driscoll had taken cover behind a stack of weapon crates, and now he was shouting orders. "Fall back to the deep chamber. We can hold them there. Move." Ethan laid down covering fire while guards started retreating deeper into the mine. In the confusion, Kane grabbed one of the prisoners, the young woman, and pressed a pistol to her head. "Everyone stop shooting, or she dies," he bellowed. The gunfire slackened as both sides processed the new situation. In the sudden relative quiet, Kane's voice rang clear and cold. "You want to play the hero, Holloway? Fine, but this woman's death will be on your head. All of you Apache, ranchers, deputies, you back off now, or I start killing prisoners one by one." The woman whimpered, terrified, tears streaming down her face. Jace could see Taya frozen halfway through picking the lock, her face twisted with helpless rage. "Let her go, Driscoll." Marshal Cordell's voice came from outside. "It's over. The canyon is surrounded. Surrender, and I guarantee you'll make it to trial alive." "Trial?" Kane laughed, the sound edging toward hysteria. "I know what happens to men like me at trial. I'll be dead before the verdict's read. Killed by some vengeful Apache or rancher. No, thank you, Marshal. We're leaving. We're taking our horses and these prisoners, and we're riding out. Anyone tries to stop us, everyone dies. Starting with her." He pressed the pistol harder against the woman's temple. She made a small broken sound of terror. "Can you hit him?" Nito whispered to Dakota in Apache. They were crouched near Jace, and both had clear shots. "Not without risking her," Dakota admitted, frustration clear in his voice. "Stand down, all of you." Chief Nuntai's voice carried into the mine. "Let them take the horses. Let them run." The desert will kill them before they reach safety. But Jace knew Cain was too smart for that. He'd have supplies cached, safe routes planned. If they let him escape now, he'd vanish into Mexico and continue his operations from there. New names, new faces, but the same evil. More people would die. More families would be destroyed. And yet, if they tried to stop him, the woman would die right now. What do we do? Taya breathed, low enough that only Jace could hear. Jace's mind raced, weighing options, calculating angles. His eyes swept the chamber, taking in positions, cover, distances. Then he saw a support beam directly behind where Cain stood, one of the old Spanish timbers that held up the mine ceiling. It was cracked, weakened by time and the fire from their previous visit. A desperate plan formed, probably suicidal. Almost certainly stupid. "I'm going to do something crazy," he whispered to Taya. "When I do, get the prisoners and run." Jace, no. But he was already moving. He stood up from behind cover, hands raised, rifle on the ground. "All right, Driscoll," he called. "You win. Take the horses, take whatever you want. Just let her go." "Jace, what are you doing?" Morrison's voice from outside, confused and angry. "What I have to." Jace walked forward slowly, hands still raised. He could feel every eye in the chamber on him, feel the weight of a dozen weapons trained on his body. "I'm unarmed, Driscoll. Let me trade. Me for her. You take me as insurance. I'm worth more to you alive anyway. I know where the ledger is, remember?" Cain studied him, suspicion and calculation warring in his expression. "Why would you do that?" "Because I'm tired of innocent people dying for guilty men's sins." Jace took another step forward. "You want a hostage who means something? Take me. The ranchers won't risk their own. The Apache won't risk a man who helped them. I'm better leverage than a woman nobody knows." It was true, and Cain knew it. Slowly, he transferred the pistol from the woman's head to point at Jace instead. "All right. Come here, slowly. Any tricks and everyone dies." Jace walked forward, every step measured and careful. As he moved, he calculated angles, distances, the strength left in his wounded body. He'd get only one chance. He was 5 feet from Cain when Ethan suddenly shouted, "Wait, this is a trick." Jace dove forward, not at Cain but at the woman. He grabbed her and pulled her down, shielding her with his body. In the same motion, he grabbed his boot knife and threw it, not at Cain, but at the cracked support beam behind him. The knife wasn't heavy enough to do real damage, but it didn't need to be. It only needed to be the final straw. The beam, already weakened, already cracked, gave way with a sound like thunder. Timbers groaned. Stone shifted. And a section of the mine ceiling came down in a roar of dust and rock. Cain Driscoll looked up just in time to see death falling toward him. He screamed, a sound cut short by tons of falling stone. Chaos erupted again. The partial cave-in triggered a stampede toward the mine entrance. Guards forgot about fighting and ran for their lives. Ethan Driscoll fired wildly, but Dakota's rifle barked once and Ethan went down, clutching his shoulder. Through the dust and confusion, Jace felt hands pulling him up, Taya and the other prisoners, all running for the exit. Behind them, the mine groaned and shifted, more timbers failing, more stone falling. They burst out into the pre-dawn air, coughing and stumbling. Around them, the battle was already over. The Driscoll's men who hadn't been in the mine when it collapsed were surrounded, weapons on the ground, hands in the air. Marshal Cordo was already shouting orders, deputies moving in with shackles. Jace fell to his knees, his side a mass of fire, blood soaking through his shirt again. But the woman he'd protected was alive. The other prisoners were alive. And somewhere in the mine, buried under tons of rock, Cain Driscoll had met the justice he'd spent years avoiding. "You fool," Taya breathed, dropping beside him. "You magnificent, stupid fool. You could have died, but I didn't," Jace managed through gritted teeth. "We didn't." Chief Nante approached, his face unreadable. He looked at Jace for a long moment, then did something unexpected. He placed his hand on Jace's shoulder. "You fought with honor," the chief said simply. "You risked your life for strangers, for justice. This is the mark of a true warrior." He paused, then added, "My daughter chose well when she saved you." "I think maybe we saved each other," Jace replied. As the sun broke over the eastern ridges, painting the canyon in shades of gold and crimson, the reality of what they'd accomplished began to sink in. The Driscoll operation was destroyed. Evidence had been gathered. Prisoners had been freed. And the war that might have consumed dozens of innocent lives had been prevented. Marshal Cordell walked over, the leather ledger in his hands. "This is going to make one hell of a case. Probably connect to a dozen other crimes across 3 territories." He looked at Jace and Taya. "You two did good work. Dangerous work. Crazy work. But good. What about him?" Taya pointed to where deputies were holding Ethan Driscoll, wounded but alive. "Will he hang?" "That's for a judge to decide," Cordell said. "But with this evidence and the testimony of the prisoners, I'd say his odds are good." Ethan Driscoll met Jace's eyes across the clearing. There was no remorse there, only hatred and rage. But there was also defeat. He knew his empire had crumbled, that his brother was dead, that everything he'd built was ash. "This isn't over," Ethan snarled as deputies dragged him toward horses. "I'll find you, Holloway. Both of you. You'll pay for—" "Shut up," one of the deputies said tiredly and clubbed Ethan with a rifle butt. The outlaw went silent, slumping in their grip. As the deputies began the process of securing prisoners and gathering evidence, Jace and Taya sat together on a rock outcrop, watching the sunrise paint the desert in impossible colors. They were both exhausted, both wounded in body and soul, but alive. "What happens now?" Taya asked quietly. "Now?" Jace considered. "Now we heal, rest, and you ride north to meet your brother when Nako brings him home. Nako sent word by runner yesterday," Taya said, and Jace could hear the emotion thick in her voice. "They found Kaya. He's alive. Thin and scarred, but alive. They're bringing him home. That's good news. The best news." "Yes." Taya was quiet for a moment, then asked, "And you? Where will you go?" "Back to the Broken Arrow, I suppose. Help Frank rebuild. See if we can make this ranch into something that lasts." He looked at her. "But I was thinking, maybe I'd visit your camp sometime. Your father said I had safe passage. Just visit?" Taya's eyes held something Jace couldn't quite read: hope, maybe, or possibility. "Well, I was thinking maybe more than visit. Maybe help sometimes. Trading partners, you know. The ranch needs good horses. Your people have the best horses in 3 territories. Could be a mutually beneficial arrangement." "Could be," Taya agreed, a smile playing at her lips. "And maybe," Jace continued, feeling suddenly awkward, "maybe we could work together on other things too. Making sure the peace holds. Making sure men like the Driscolls don't fill the vacuum. There's a lot of desert out here, and not enough honest people trying to make it better." "Are you asking to be my partner, Jace Holloway?" Taya asked, and now she was definitely smiling. "I guess I am. If you'll have me." Taya stood and offered him her hand. The partnership worked pretty well so far. Seems foolish to end it now. Jace took her hand and let her pull him to his feet. They stood close together, the rising sun warming their faces, and for just a moment, the pain and fear and exhaustion faded into something else, something that felt like hope. "You saved me first," Jace said quietly, remembering that first night in the cave, when death had been certain and she'd appeared like an answered prayer. "But you saved me last," Taya replied, her eyes holding his, "when it mattered most. When everything hung in the balance. So we're even?" "No," she shook her head, and her smile was warm and real. "We're partners, and partners don't keep score. They just keep showing up for each other. Again and again, for as long as it takes." Behind them, Chief Nanta'i called out in Apache, summoning his warriors to prepare for the journey home. The ranchers were mounting up, ready to return to their spreads. The deputies were organizing the captured outlaws for the long ride to jail. The Battle of Skeleton Canyon was over. The story would be told and retold around campfires and in saloons, growing with each telling until it became legend. The Apache woman and the cowboy who'd prevented a war, who'd brought down an empire of crime, who'd proven that enemies could become allies when they fought for something larger than themselves. But for Jace and Taya, it wasn't legend. It was just Tuesday. Just another day of choosing to do the hard thing, the right thing, even when it meant risking everything. "Come on," Taya said, tugging his hand. "Singing Crow is over there, looking at your side with that expression that means you're about to get scolded for tearing your stitches again." "Worth it," Jace said. "Yes," Taya agreed, looking back at the mine entrance where evil men had built an empire on suffering, where that empire had finally come crashing down. It was. They walked together toward the gathering groups, toward healing and home and whatever came next. The desert stretched out around them, vast and harsh and beautiful, holding its secrets close. But this secret, at least, had been dragged into the light. Justice, hard-won and blood-bought, had been served. And in a world where justice often seemed as rare as water in the wasteland, that was worth celebrating. Even if the celebration looked like sitting still while an ancient Apache healer muttered disapprovingly and rebandaged your wounds for the third time that week. The sun climbed higher. The day grew warm. And in the scarred earth of Skeleton Canyon, where evil had made its stand and fallen, new stories were already beginning. Stories of alliance, of courage, of two people from different worlds who met in the darkness and chosen to walk toward the light together. The desert would remember. And years later, when travelers passed through Skeleton Canyon, some claimed they could still feel it, the echoes of that dawn when justice rode on. The wind and partnerships forged in fire proved stronger than hate. The fall brought cooler air to the desert, painting the cottonwoods gold along the creek that ran through the Broken Arrow Ranch. Jace stood on the porch of the main house, watching riders approach from the north. He'd been expecting them. Taya had sent word 3 days ago that she was coming for their quarterly meeting, about the horse trading arrangement that had proven profitable for both the ranch and her people. But as the riders drew closer, Jace saw that Taya wasn't alone. A young man rode beside her, thin still, but filling out with good food and time. Kaya, home for 3 months now, healing in body and spirit from his ordeal in the mines. And behind them rode Chief Nanta himself, along with Nako and 4 other warriors. This was more than a business visit. Frank Morrison emerged from the barn and whistled low. "That's a delegation if I ever saw one." "You know what this is about?" "Not sure," Jace admitted. "But I'm about to find out." The Apache party rode into the yard, and Taya dismounted with her usual fluid grace. She wore a new dress, intricately beaded, and her hair was woven with small silver ornaments. She looked beautiful and fierce, and happy, more at peace than Jace had ever seen her. "You're looking well," he greeted her, smiling. "And you're not bleeding for once," she replied. A pleasant change. The formal greetings were exchanged, hospitality offered and accepted. They gathered in the ranch house's main room, a space that had never seen such a gathering before. Apache chiefs and white ranchers sitting together over coffee, speaking of trade and weather and the harvest. Finally, Chief Nanta set down his cup and looked directly at Jace. 3 moons ago, you risked your life to help my people. You fought beside us. Bled beside us. He paused, weighing his words. You helped bring my son home. Kaya nodded, his young face serious. I would still be in that mine if not for you. For what you and my sister did. You're welcome, Jace said simply, unsure where this was leading. In my culture, Nantai continued, when a debt of life is owed, it must be honored. You have earned a place among us, not as a white man, not as an outsider, but as one who has proven his heart. We have a ceremony for this. A recognition. He pulled something from his belt, a beaded band meant to be worn around the upper arm. If you will accept it, You will be recognized as friend to the Apache. As family, the room was silent. Jace looked at the band, at the intricate beadwork that must have taken weeks to create, at the symbol woven into it, a design that represented alliance, trust, kinship. I don't know what to say, Jace admitted. Say yes, Taya said softly, smiling. Unless you have something better to do. Jace took the band, feeling the weight of it, not just the physical weight, but what it represented. A bridge between worlds. A promise kept and honored. A future built on mutual respect rather than fear. Yes, he said. I accept. With honor and gratitude, Nante stood and tied the band around Jace's arm himself, speaking words in Apache that Jace didn't understand but felt in his bones. When it was done, the chief stepped back and nodded once approval, respect, welcome. There's one more thing, Taya said, and there was something in her voice that made Jace look at her carefully. My father has asked me to establish a permanent trading post, a place where our people and yours can meet, exchange goods, build trust. It will need someone to run it. Someone both sides trust. Sounds like an important job, Jace said. It is, which is why I was hoping you might help me with it. She held his gaze, and Jace saw the question there, not just about business, but about something deeper. Partners, remember? We don't keep score. We just keep showing up. I remember, Jace said, feeling a smile spread across his face. And I'm still showing up. Good. Taya's smile matched his. Because I'd hate to have to run this operation alone. Too much paperwork. Laughter rippled through the room, Apache and White both, sharing the moment. And in that laughter was the sound of something new being born. Not the end of conflict. There would still be challenges, still be people on both sides who resisted change, but a beginning, a foundation. Later, after the formal business was concluded and the guests were preparing to depart, Jace and Taya stood together on the porch, watching the sunset paint the desert in familiar colors. You know, Jace said, when I was dying in that canyon, I never imagined this is where I'd end up. Where? On a porch with an Apache woman discussing trading post logistics. Partners with someone who saved my life. Building something that might actually last. He looked at her. Happy. Taya was quiet for a moment, her expression thoughtful. My mother used to say that the desert teaches two lessons. First, that survival requires strength. But second, that nothing survives alone. Even the mighty saguaro needs rain. Even the fierce hawk needs wind beneath its wings. Wise woman. She was. Taya's voice was soft with memory. She would have liked you. Would have said you have good eyes, that you see people, not just enemies or allies. I learned that from you, Jace said. You saw a dying enemy and chose to see a human being first. That changed everything. We changed everything, Taya corrected. Together, like we'll keep doing. From the yard, Chief Nante called out that they were ready to depart. Taya waved acknowledgement, then turned back to Jace. I'll return in 2 weeks. We can scout locations for the trading post. I'll be here. I know you will. She smiled, that warm, genuine smile that still had the power to make Jace's breath catch. You always show up, Jace Holloway. It's one of your better qualities. She mounted her horse with easy grace, and as the Apache party rode out, Kaya raised a hand in farewell. The young man looked stronger now, the haunted look fading from his eyes. He was healing, as they all were, slowly, imperfectly, but healing. Frank Morrison joined Jace on the porch, watching the riders disappear into the golden evening light. Never thought I'd see the day, the old foreman said. Apache and White, working together like it's normal. Maybe it should be normal, Jace replied. Maybe that's the point, maybe. Morrison was quiet for a moment, then added, You did good, son. Real good. Your pa would have been proud. Thanks, Frank. They stood together in comfortable silence as the sun touched the horizon. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote sang its evening song, that wild, lonesome sound that spoke of survival and persistence in a harsh land. But it didn't sound quite so lonesome anymore. Because now Jace knew what the desert had been trying to teach all along. That strength wasn't just in enduring alone, but in choosing to stand together. In building alliances that could weather storms. In seeing enemies as potential friends and choosing connection over isolation. The band on his arm was proof of that. And so was the partnership he forged with a woman who appeared in his darkest moment and offered not just survival but hope. The desert stretched out before him, vast and golden in the fading light. It looked different now than it had 3 months ago. Not softer, it would never be soft, but less hostile. More like home, because home wasn't just a place. It was the people you chose to stand beside, the promises you kept, the partnerships you built one difficult day at a time. And as the stars began to emerge in the deepening twilight, Jace knew with absolute certainty that this was just the beginning. There would be challenges ahead, resistance from both sides, times when the old hatreds tried to reassert themselves. But there would also be moments like this: sunsets shared, coffee drunk together, trade conducted with honor, children growing up knowing that the old ways of hatred weren't the only ways. That was worth fighting for, worth bleeding for, worth showing up for again and again for as long as it took. "You saved me first," Jace whispered to the desert wind, thinking of Taya kneeling beside him in that canyon, offering water when she should have offered death. And somewhere out there, riding toward her own home under the same stars, perhaps Taya was thinking the same thing. "But I'll save you last," she might have been saying, remembering Jace's body shielding hers from falling stone, his courage that had turned the tide, his stubbornness that matched her own. The truth was, they'd saved each other more times than either could count. And they'd keep doing it through whatever came next, whatever challenges the future held. Because that's what partners did. That's what family did. They showed up. They fought together. They built something better from the ashes of what had been. And in the hard country of the frontier, where survival was never guaranteed and trust was harder to find than water in the wasteland, that kind of partnership was worth more than all the gold in California. It was worth everything. The night settled over the Broken Arrow Ranch, quiet and peaceful. And in that peace was the promise of dawn. Another day, another chance, another opportunity to prove that enemies could become allies, that hatred could transform into respect, that the bonds forged in darkness could shine all the brighter in the light. The desert remembered. The stars bore witness. And the story lived on not as legend, but as living truth, written in the hearts of all who'd been part of it. A story of courage and kindness, of justice hard-won and peace hard-earned, of two people from different worlds who'd met in the shadow of death and chosen instead to walk toward life. Together, always together. And in the end, that made all the difference.
Thanks for watching this story till the end. Comment below and tell me where you're watching from. And before you go, check out these other amazing Western stories waiting for you next. Subscribe, like, and I'll see you on the next ride.